Okay, darling people, happy to see you all. I'm in London, just arrived in London. I've been in, I was just most recently in Stockholm. A bit chilly there, but now I'm in London. It's chilly here too, but it's kind of different chilly. And anyway, happy to be here. Happy to see you all. So we have this little hour together to think about, analyze, contemplate the meaning of, Buddha's view of the world, basically. That's it, So let's make the most of it. Listen, think about it. And the thing is, we maybe have heard this stuff 1,000 times. I mean, I've probably said it 10,000 times, but I think it really has meaning when we hear it freshly every time. I think that's why I never get bored, because every time I say it for myself, it goes a little bit deeper. I think that's what, if we're really trying to practice, that's how it is. If you kind of go, oh yeah, I've heard that already, tell me something new, then we're lost, So I think it's really important. And I'm sure you have the same experience, the very first time we hear it, the second time, and then I know always it's very interesting when I remember in the very traditional teachings, among the lamas, for example, let's say the Dalai Lama is giving a teaching, and all the old abbots in the front row who are kind of 80 something, they've heard it 1,000 times, and then the little ones in the back have maybe heard it once. The same words, the same words to all the ears, but each of us hears it according to our capacity. That's why we sometimes can say, well, you can give advanced teachings or you can give simple teachings. But when someone like the Dalai Lama gives simple teachings, even the most advanced practitioners will hear something from it. I think that's, I find, really relevant. So always have a very fresh view, Listen and take what we can according to our own capacity. That's the way to listen. And actually, it's very interesting that the Tibetans have a lovely way of saying, don't be like, for listening, don't be like the three pots. Don't be like the pot that's upside down and nothing goes in. So the mind is so busy you can't hear anything. That's very sensible, not to be like that. The next pot not to be is a pot that's got a hole in it, in one ear and out the other, because we get so distracted. I mean, we know about that one. And the third pot is it's really dirty. So whatever goes in, whatever you hear, you're always so critical. Oh, that's ridiculous. Or what are you talking about? Oh, that's rubbish. I don't agree with that. Your mind's so kind of negative, you can't even hear anything, even to be able to think about it. So have a nice open mind, try and retain what we hear, and try and keep the mind, the ears wide open. I mean, it's sort of obvious, really, So I like that story. I say it sometimes, but most of the time I don't. The three pots. So, okay, what to talk about today? I've absolutely no idea. So I'm going to have to ask you to ask me some questions. Come on. Or something you thought about recently. I mean, we did lots of stuff in Stockholm recently, and Alona was there. So maybe, Alona, you have something to say. You have something to ask based on what you've heard this weekend. Poor Alona, I've just pointed her. Was there anything you wanted to discuss, Alona, that we talked about this weekend?
Hi, Venerable.
Hello, darling.
Yes, I love the teachings. I'm so glad that I came, and yeah, I just I'm still gliding on this energy of yours.
Wonderful. Very good.
Still have it.
Yes.
And I was thinking, how to deepen my practice. How do you deepen your practice with your teacher and with yourself? Like, how we go from listening to teachings and then come back to a daily life and not
right,
losing.
exactly. No, it's a practical question, and the answer is practical, isn't it? I mean, but the trouble is sometimes it's a bit tricky, because when you go to music lessons, I mean, one thing is listening, and then the practice is to then play the piano, so that you can really distinguish the difference between the listening and the playing the piano. If you listen to the recipes at the cooking school, then you have to go home and do the cake. Again, you can distinguish really easily from listening to the theories and then making the cake. But with this, because it's advice about the mind at one level, the real practice is day to day when you are applying the concepts in your mind. But the trouble is, you listen to the theories with your mind and you practice with your mind. And sometimes we confuse the two. This is why I know Lama Yeshe, when he started teaching us Western, at least Western people, anyway, when he first met all the hippies in the 1970s, He would always say, he would always never encourage his students to learn Tibetan, for example, which was very necessary in a way because all the teachers were Tibetan. It had only been out of Tibet for 20 years, No, by that point, only 10 years, 15 years. When Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa met Western students in Kathmandu in like 1969, 1970, 1971, it was 10 years only out of Tibet, So most teachers were Tibetan and many of them never learned English. We were so fortunate that Lama Zopa and Lama Yeshe both started to learn English. I mean, that's really astonishing, actually. So if you wanted to understand your teacher, then either you had to always have a translator or you had to learn Tibetan. But Lama Yeshe had this marvelous ability to just express in really beautiful English. I mean, chaotic English. His structure, his grammar was a disaster, but he really chose the words carefully that really struck you. But he'd always say he never showed any interest in his students learning Tibetan, because he said, when my students start to learn Tibetan, they become too intellectual and I am shocked. And it's easy to get captivated because Buddha's philosophical teachings are super fascinating. I mean, they really are very, very fascinating. I mean, all these years in the West, scientists and thinkers love engaging in Buddhist ideas because these genius Indians, even before the Buddha, like I always talk, more than 3,000 years ago, incredibly sophisticated philosophy and psychology and spiritual practice that we're only really now beginning to show interest in the modern world, the scientific world. So people love these ideas, especially when you listen to the more esoteric teachings or the more intense philosophical views about the ultimate nature of reality. I mean, people just love listening to these teachings. So it's easy to get captivated by the concepts, by the philosophy, and think, oh, wow, I love Buddhism. Buddhism's amazing. But then when you look at what the point of it all is, and if we don't know that, you lose the plot. You just you fill your head full of philosophy, but your heart is cold, That's why if you notice all the time we talk, and I'm all the time talking about the mind, about our feelings, about emotions, about the mind, about how the mind sees things. That's the final point about it, I mean, the discussion, the teachings we had all this weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in Stockholm, for the full weekend, and Alona was there. Caroline was there also from Belgium. She's here now. I mean, the topic we had was very interesting. They called it not believing what you think. And it sounds kind of cute, It sounds that's very interesting, very nice. But actually, this is the total point that Buddha is making about why we suffer. And this is a total surprise to us. It sounds kind of cliche, But this is the real point that Buddha's making. What he's basically saying is that the extent to which we suffer and then indeed harm others on the basis of that is directly related to the thoughts and feelings and emotions and concepts in our mind. This is a very specific approach, I tell you. And initially, it's a big surprise to us. Initially, we really can't hear it, And why, of course, is because we believe suffering is the boyfriend and the weather and the wrong food and the politics, all the world out there. And we can be forgiven for thinking that because the world out there is very compelling, is huge, it's massive. The world is what we think happiness and suffering is out there, beyond our eyes and our ears, So this one of looking into your mind and observing that the way we interpret the world out there is exactly what Buddha is saying is the basis of our happiness and suffering. I mean, this is really shocking. So we have to prove that to ourselves. And it's across the board, I mean, in other words, the Buddha's saying, when you're fully developed spiritually using this Buddhist approach to spiritual development, what you've actually achieved is that you've removed from your mind, utterly removed, utterly eradicated all the emotional, they call them afflictions, all the emotional neuroses, the neurotic emotions, the disturbing emotions that have a clear function of being misconceptions. And because we believe 1,000,000,000% in those misconceptions, and of course, the Buddha would say we've come into this life with these misconceptions totally programmed in our mind to the point that we don't even know that we're seeing things wrongly. I mean, it sounds rather weird, but that means we have to prove it. This is really what daily practice is about. So as we always talk about the mind, we've got these neurotic, deluded, emotional, unhappy, distorted, disturbing states of mind. I mean, we all know them. Attachment and anger and jealousy and anxiety and fears and hopelessness and despair. We know these are suffering. But the analysis we give in the world for why we have them is because of things out there. But the Buddha's got much more direct picture. He says, yes, the world, of course it plays a role, but he's saying those actual emotional, actual disturbing emotions, actual jealousy, anger, despair, jealousy, and so on, they have a particular component that it takes time to investigate, but which we have to do, they're disturbing. One characteristic is that they're very disturbing. That's pretty clear. Check the last time you're anxious or jealous. You don't say, wow, it was great, I was anxious yesterday. They're by definition disturbing. So that's clearly evident to us. But the core, why they are disturbing, and this really does take time to see. Why they are disturbing. Well, first, because we had them, we're totally addicted to them from countless lifetimes, Buddha would say, of belief, of being caught up in these emotions. They're all the voices of ego, if you like. So they're very gripping, very painful. But the thing that really we have to investigate as we start to see our mind, and then go ever more deep, ever more deep, ever more deep, and catch what's going on in our mind ever more quickly before it becomes unbearable. We're going to see that these unhappy emotions are rooted deep down inside, are impelled by, are underpinned by, are rooted in very clear conceptual stories that are misconceptions. I mean, it seems very abstract to say it like that. And that's what we have to learn to unpack, and change the stories, because the stories inside us, attachment, anger, jealousy, anxiety, are the way we perceive the world. And this Buddha says, he's not being moralistic, he says we misconceive things. So attachment is a really good example, It's such a simple example. When you're overly emotionally hungry for something, already there's a misconception, because you underestimate your own worth. You think I am nothing. You feel you're missing something. So therefore you crave the cake, or crave the boyfriend, or crave the new job, or always assuming that is when I get that, then I'll feel better, then I'll be more worthy, then I will be happy. And so what attachment does is basically, in its bones, is exaggerate the deliciousness of that thing, and exaggerate the power of that thing or that person or that event to make me happy. Literally, we've got it wrong, Buddha says, but it's extremely hard to see this because that's deep down and it's very instinctive. So, I mean, we sort of know these things. When some kid suddenly has a complete panic attack, or a big person, all of us, they're freaking out because their sister hurt them or something, angry, they're angry. As my mother would tell me, Bobsy, darling, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. So we don't like to hear that, because we do really believe the whole world has collapsed. When you're in tears, mummy, Janet said this to me, you just collapse. And you know that after a while you calm down and you realize it wasn't as bad as you thought. Okay, it's not always like that because some things are so terrible and they are as bad as we thought, which is why we go crazy, because we can't handle them. But the Buddha's saying all the time, it's not just the event that is the source of the pain or the source of the happiness. You've got to combine it with our interpretation of the event. And he is even saying the interpretation has more power than the event. This is very surprising to us. And we know that, you see, like, so Buddha's point is, when we see this and we start to listen to these cognitive stories, these conceptual stories deep down in our bones, then we're going to identify these misconceptions. But this is really quite sophisticated because it's not the way we think in our culture, you know. So it demands a lot of precision, a lot of courage, and a lot of patience, you know, with ourselves. So one of those stories, you know, I was just talking to somebody I know, I've known for years, you know, since she was a kid. And, you know, she's got a life and she's successful and, you know, with children, good family, all the things she's wanted, but having crippling anxiety, panic attacks, you know. So we're just not, so anxiety. So we were discussing it. And like with most of us, to one degree or another, it's rooted for her, as we were identifying it, rooted in her feeling that she's not worthy, that she's less than she is. And so she looks up in an inappropriate way to people she thinks are amazing. But there's always this, I mean, people can be amazing and it's good to look up to people. But if you're looking up at a person with a feeling of poor me and they're better than me and I want their approval, that is painful experience, emotional, but it's a total misconception. It feels real. So, you know, her constant craving to prove herself to this group of professional colleagues, you know. So enormous anxiety that she's going to fail or that she's less than them or they're going to find her, you know, that's conception. That's a story the mind tells. But we don't notice the story. And this is the tragedy. And we talked about this a lot this weekend in Stockholm. We don't notice the story because it's so automatic and we believe it so totally. And then it just drives us and becomes enormously emotional. And it's only when it becomes emotional and we're having anxiety attacks that we then notice it. That's the biggest thing, I would say, the greatest gift we can receive from the Buddha is this skill to learn to practice, you know, concentration, meditation every day, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes. And you bring from that skill where you've been sitting for 5 minutes, training yourself just to watch the breath. There's nothing fancy about the breath. You're training yourself to pay attention to something. And so you're training yourself not to buy into and follow blindly all the emotions. You're stepping out of the emotions and just watching the breath. So all those thoughts and the feelings and emotions won't go away. In fact, they'll feel worse. But the big skill you're getting is that once you open your eyes and you start dealing with your boyfriend, your husband, the children, the traffic, the boss, and all the world again, you're gradually developing this ability to have awareness, not only of the boyfriend, the children, the traffic, but also all the thoughts in your mind. That's the skill we have to learn. And eventually, as we become more and more sophisticated at hearing those thoughts beneath the emotions, that's when you start to do the changing. But our trouble is, like I use the example, you've never heard of car mechanics, you've never heard of such a thing, and you drive your car and drive your car and drive your car, and one day on the freeway at 100 miles an hour, you suddenly notice the wheels are falling off because you've never paid attention. And this is our trouble in the Western world, Western psychological models. We don't notice we're angry until you're shaking. We don't notice you're having anxiety until your body is shaking because they're rooted in these subtle thoughts way deep down. So this is why it's a difficult job. That's why if you start getting caught up in blaming the outside, you will never, ever look at the right place, which is your thoughts, which are describing that event to you. So this thought that I'm less is very subtle inside us. The thought to, oh, I want to revere these people. That's such a mistaken conception, but it's very ancient in us, probably since we're born. Attachment to the person, just to the cake, is a misconception. When you're emotionally hungry and your stomach's empty and you're really attached to cake and you think about it and you get it and there it is on the plate, we know we're like greedy little children. We can't wait to shove it in the mouth. It's sort of, you've got to have enormous discipline to let the cake sit there while you're hungry. It's like impossible, because that's the energy of attachment. It's not just your hunger, it's attachment. Over exaggerating the deliciousness of that cake. This sounds so silly, but it's profound. It's a misconception. And then the misconception that when you get the cake, you'll get happy is a real misconception. It begins to be happy, but you keep stuffing more cake in because you're not happy yet. Before you know it, you want to vomit. What happened to the happiness? It's turned into suffering again. This is the way Buddha says we suffer. I mean, it's very subtle. His analysis really goes to very subtle levels. We've got to start at simple levels, and we just build on it and build on it and build on it as we keep practicing. So Alona, this is daily life. So then you start your day with a formal practice, you end your day with a formal practice, which gives us some courage. And we need those types of practices, doing our mantras, doing our concentration, maybe doing our, different visualization practices. They all support us in our practice. And then you watch your mind and your body and your speech like a hawk throughout the day. And then the other component of practice, you listen to the teachings, because it's advice. You don't just close your eyes and magically know how to make a cake. You've got to listen to the cooks. You don't magically know how to play music just by closing your eyes, which we think meditation is, it's sort of mystical. No. You listen to the advice and then you apply it in daily life. So that's the answer, Alona.
I have a question in the chat.
Good, Lou. What is it?
It says, would you explain the 4 steps of purification? I have heard it as the 4 R's.
That's right, exactly. Right, I'll do that, yeah. So as you know, we have it in our Tuk Nobi Ling Center. We do it every evening at 9 p.m. Santa Fe time, which is really helpful, a 30-minute guided meditation. So you're very welcome to come to that. But let me describe it. So the understanding of how you purify karma sort of implies you have to know about karma in the first place, doesn't it? You have to understand how we create karma. So this concept of karma for the Buddha is just this process of everything we think and do and say producing the person we become. So by lessening our attachments and fears and low self-esteem and jealousy and growing our goodness and courage and confidence and kindness, that's what we're molding ourselves into a really nice person. So that's really the simplest meaning of karma. Everything we think and do and say produces the person we become. Also even has also not only that, but has a more profound level, includes even who we meet and how we're seen and how we're treated. It's Buddha's philosophy of the universe, how the universe ticks, So then on the basis of that, we can see we have unhappy tendencies that make us miserable. We've done things that harm others. And every one of these leaves seeds in our mind, leaves imprints in our mind. And we don't want these seeds to ripen as our future suffering. We want to continually sow seeds in our mind, if you like, that will ripen as our future happiness. So, in other words, the way of talking about karma, it's framed in terms of happiness and suffering. So we, on the basis of not wanting suffering and only wanting happiness, and we learn to mold our minds. We learn to practice, control our body, control our speech, lessen the delusions and grow the goodness. So another practice is the one we do at the end of the day. And it's kind of taking stock of the day, And it's psychologically so practical. The first step, the 4 R's, is to regret. To acknowledge I did this, said this, kicked the dog, shouted at my boyfriend, murdered my next door neighbor, whatever, that you remember you've done, which we tend to get very guilty and caught up in and get very stressed about. We shouldn't. We have to learn to change and look at it very sincerely. Well, I did do this, and I did do that, and I did do this. And the first part of regret is, it's not guilt. It's more, I did do that, and I don't want that seed to ripen as my future suffering. So on the basis of this, I regret having done that. I was out of control. I was ignorant. I didn't know that action would create more suffering for me. So you regret it for this wholesome reason that you are sick of suffering. It's like compassion for yourself. And then you think, well, whom can I turn to? You know, the second one, reliance. So when we think of the Buddha as our doctor, he's not our creator. There's no concept of creator in Buddhism. We're not asking the Buddha to forgive us, which is what you do if you're a Christian. So this is very different. You know, you don't ask your doctor to forgive you for eating sugar. You ask your doctor to please kindly give you the medicine or give you the methods to stop getting diabetes. You know, that's the Buddha. So we rely upon the Buddha. And the second part of that second step, you now have compassion for those you have caused problems with, those you've harmed, you know, the ants you killed, maybe, you know, I had an abortion when I was 23. I always think about that because out of my own ignorance, I didn't think of it as killing a sentient being, but that's what a fetus is a sentient being. So I regret having done that because of, and then the second one is you have compassion for those you've harmed. The third step is you take the remedy. There's different things you can do, but there's a particular practice we do, visualizing the Buddha, saying a mantra that's said to be very powerful medicine. And the fourth one is resolve, the decision to change. You know, for 24 hours, I will not shout at my boyfriend. You know, if you've got a vow not to kill, I will never kill. So you reiterate your vows and your commitments, and then you make decisions and give yourself timeline. You're in charge of the process. You're in charge of the process. And I mean, it's a very powerful practice at the end of the day. You know, you go to bed with a happy mind. You sort of dealt with all the stuff that you're carrying around, sorting it out, you know. That's the essence of it, really. I hope that helps. So yes, Christy, talk to me.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, good. I got this little speaker here.
I can see it's a big speaker.
Big speaker.
Yeah, go.
You were talking about the world out there, and you know, I guess I would think that my body is something of the world out there as well.
Exactly. In a sense, the body is even the world out there also. Exactly, Christine.
Yeah, and your tips about changing the stories, misperceiving things, exaggerating, interpretations have more power than the event. That's all really helpful to help me deal with, you know, aging, illness, and pain.
Yes.
But I find that when I'm in the depths of it, which can last, you know, a day or two, I lose awareness of the teachings. I lose. It's like I lose ground. It's like I don't care anymore. It's the I'm overwhelmed, and
I see.
what to do when you're overwhelmed? I can't sit and meditate because of the pain. You know, that kind of thing. What do you do? A tip maybe that would help me when I'm in that kind of situation.
So you get overwhelmed because external circumstances are too difficult, or pain is too difficult, or your thoughts are too difficult. I mean, what would be the...
No, the thoughts are fine. The external conditions are fine. It's just the discomfort. That's all.
Physical.
Yeah.
I understand, darling. I mean, this is a major one for many people, isn't it? I mean, it's a major one for many people, Christy. And I mean, it's not an easy one. I mean, there's no quick fix. If we can get drugs to help us, what a miracle, you know. But sometimes we can see pain is so prevalent. I mean, I can't imagine how people survive it sometimes. It's very, very difficult, Christy. There's no quick fix. But let me just say some things, because it's really hard work. I mean, I think often in the medical profession these days, there's lots of people who deal with working with pain. And I think this is agreed in our modern world. And I think if we listen to this, it's a bit shocking, but it really does make sense. We have to distinguish between the actual physical experience and our interpretation of the experience. And this is the part that's hard to hear, because we hear it as criticism, but it's not criticism. That when naturally, you see, the primordial level of attachment working is it's this junky inness, deeply instinctive, beyond intellectual, Christy, that only wants pleasant feelings. We can see this in a simple day. Every choice we make is on the basis of what will bring the nice food, the nice experience, the nice sound, the thing we want. I understand everything is based on that. So there's lots of virtue in that, but it's driven underneath by this constant craving to get the nice things. So then as soon as the nice thing doesn't happen, the wrong sound, you break the cup, your partner shouts at you, the traffic light is red, tiny things. Look at our mind, Christy. Immediately we get agitated, which is another polite word for aversion. We don't want that. So the stronger that thing is, pain is a perfect example. Powerful aversion arises, Christy, and that is the main source of the suffering. And it's almost impossible. It seems like a joke to think that you shouldn't have aversion to pain. It's just so primordially automatic for us. But this is part of the practice. And I know that in the modern medical people talk in this way. We learn to interpret it differently, find other methods to see it differently. It's as profound, but as simple as that. When we feel, as long as we can identify, I mean, often for some people, there's the kind of straightforward anger. Why is this happening? How dare this happen? But even just a primordial aversion is the mind, the physical is the body. They're actually different events, but because we're so addicted to only wanting nice things, aversion arises when the unnice thing comes. So it's easier, let's say, you could argue, with an external event such as, a loud noise or the red light or a person shouting. It's pretty intense, but we can learn to interpret it differently, which makes us less suffer. But we can also do that with our physical experiences. It really takes practice. It really takes practice, Christy, but we need to see that they're different, because we have such an assumption. Well, of course, I'm having aversion. It's painful. It is instinctive, but it's possible in different ways to help our minds see this and change the way we interpret it. Are we communicating, darling? It's a tough one, but it's possible, Christy. Really.
Robina, sorry.
Hang
I
on a
have a
second.
question. No problem.
Hang on a second. Yeah. Are we? So that's the crucial thing, to see the difference. But we tend not to. We assume a happy feeling should come when a nice thing happens, and we assume, or we have aversion. We have aversion when an unnice thing happens, but we can learn, we can really, even that. And that's why even examples like my friend Sunny in prison, wrongly accused and all those things, which is an utter nightmare. Her husband was executed. She lost her children. Her parents were killed. She was accused of killing two policemen, on death row for 17 years. And she learned to change her way of seeing it. She said, I knew I couldn't change anything, but they couldn't take my mind from me. I mean, even that, I think, is almost easier than it's the body, the physical body that we occupy, but it's the same principle.
That's just really helpful. Thanks so much.
Good, Christine. Good, darling. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.
What else is there, Lou?
There's a question in chat. It's from Aaron.
Good.
What if you have to kill in self-defense? I found out I have anaphylaxis, and I'll end up in the ICU if I get stung. So she sprays for scorpions. And she's also wondering.
You have to start again, please. I'm so sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. What do you do if you have to kill in self-defense? I have severe allergies, and I'll end up in the ICU if I get stung by a scorpion. So I spray for them.
What?
If I get stung by scorpions.
And then the next sentence you said?
And I'll end up in the ICU.
I know that, but after that you said another sentence.
Oh, she has to spray for them to keep them from getting in the house.
I don't understand those words you're saying. She has to what?
Spray.
What do you mean spray?
put down scorpion killing things.
Okay. Okay, so the question,
A chemical.
okay, good. So who's asking that question? Can you talk to me? It's helpful if you talk to me.
Okay, Venerable Robina.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi,
Whose question is this?
Aaron. My name's Aaron.
Oh, where are you, sweet? I want to see you. Where are you? I'm trying to look for your face.
Somewhere in the
Oh, you
group.
are. I see you, darling. Talk to me, Erin. Good. Talk to me,
Hi.
sweetheart. Okay.
Well, I live in a place that has these things called bark scorpions, and I stepped on one and I ended up in the hospital.
Hmm.
And it's crazy because my little cat was playing with one and she got stung. So we have these matching little EpiPens that we, in case we get stung again. But basically the doctor told me the next time that could be it, you might check out. And because it was that bad of a reaction.
I
So,
understand, darling. Yeah.
so I have to,
So what's your,
they
so
come
what's
inside.
solution? So what solution do you feel? I mean, maybe it's best that you move. I mean, but it's so severe to live around like poison, something that could kill you. That's pretty terrible. That's very dangerous, isn't it? Maybe you need to move.
Yeah. Oh, believe me, that has crossed my mind.
Because I mean, these scorpions, even if you kill thousands of them, I mean, any creatures, they're going to keep coming, honey. They're going to keep coming. I mean, sometimes when the external condition is so severe, you've got to really look at the options. Because I mean, even if you kill lots of them, it doesn't mean they're still not going to come creeping up, isn't it? Don't you agree? And you'd be living in such fear, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
That's
it's
right.
definitely been a concern.
Absolutely.
Where I live, they're kind of they come in. I've sealed the doors and I've done all this stuff, but I guess my question was, like in a case where you actually can't, spraying actually harms them, right? They die from that, and I don't get happiness from it at all, even
Not, darling,
after what.
No, I understand that part. I mean, I can answer that part, but I'm more concerned about, I mean, you can keep, what I'm trying to get at, sure, you keep killing and you live in fear, and killing can never be good because it's not out of love and compassion, it's out of your fear, and that can't be good for you. That's the point about karma. It's not some moralistic issue. If you have to kill creatures every day, that's stressful for you. It creates that habit in your mind. It's not going to make you happy. It's not going to make you compassionate. It's going to upset your mind. That's the real point. See, I think it's a bigger question for you, isn't it? Surely that's the first thing that occurs to me, Aaron. If this is really that serious and you're in an area with these creatures, you really know. I mean, my first instinct would be, I've got to find a new place. That for me is the more powerful response to your point.
Right.
Yes. Have you
Yes.
thought of that though, or are you too entrenched where you are?
I believe me. Yes, I have.
Family and friends and everything.
Wade. Yes, it's the situation right now. A move is difficult.
Exactly.
I can get the problem under control.
How can you do?
Well, if you there's this spray that you can get on Amazon that gets rid of them. But they
prevent them. I mean, preventative is always the best, no matter what, isn't it? Don't you think preventative is better? Whatever the thing might be, if it's a poison plant or a poison animal, isn't preventative a more skillful method? Are there ways of preventing them from coming?
I do sort of a defense in depth kind of thing. So I've sealed all the cracks and the doors, and it's, believe me, the whole house has been undergone, and they still every once in a while get inside.
Right. See, that's my point. All I'm saying is, you sure we can talk about the karma of killing, and I even said it briefly. You can see yourself, you'd rather be peaceful and compassionate and kind, wouldn't you, in your life? That's what you'd like to be. So if you're forced by a situation to feel you have to kill and have to protect and live in fear, I mean, it's a horrible way to live, Erin. I think you've got to look at the bigger picture. You've got to look at the bigger picture. Every day, paranoia like this, like living in a place fearing of rapists coming in, so you lock the doors. I mean, it's not a way to live, honey.
Yeah.
I mean, you see,
point well taken. Point well taken.
You got to look at everything, not just, is it okay to kill or not kill? It's more what it does to your mind, and forget about the harm you do to a scorpion. Never mind that. But that's the thing about the first level of karma in Buddhism. We've got to see that when we harm others and lie and kill, it harms us, Aaron. It makes life very stressful. It's fairly evident, and I don't know how you can live like that. It'll be so much fear. If they're going to kill you, it's terrible. That's my thoughts of when you tell me about it. That's my response, darling.
Yeah, you're definitely right. You're right about it. I don't have the ability to move right now.
Of course not, I understand that, darling. But look
It's
at
on my,
but look at preventative from the big picture point of view. Try and find preventative methods.
right,
That'll be more
Right.
safe for you and be more peaceful for your own mind, you know?
definitely.
Preventative. Yeah. That's my best
Yeah.
response, darling. Take care of yourself though.
But well, one more question. In the case when you kind of have to do something like that, is the 4 R's
Of
a
course,
remedy
of course.
against the karma?
Of course, darling, of course it is. So the more aware we can be, the more compassionate we can be, everything, the way we think about things impacts upon the karma we create. Of course it does, because it's the mind, you see. So, I mean, of course you can do all of that. But in the end, it's like saying, well, I can break my leg and then I can fix it again. Well, I break my leg and I can fix it again. At some point, you can't fix it. It's going to be broken too often. So it's just a bigger thing. Of course, darling, as much compassion as you can have, no matter what you do, as much compassion, and the least you can do to harm, that's always the best. Yes, of course, there's nothing you can't change, but sort of like, you know, if you're a kind, compassionate person. Anyway, I've answered. Of course, sweetheart, of course, darling.
Thank you.
Good, Erin. Thanks, darling. Who else is there? Yes, Navita, talk to me.
Hi, Venerable. I had a question similar to Christie's, half similar. I was wondering when our emotions get so strong that I feel like there's nothing really I can do to overcome it. Like I'm just so in such emotional pain or in such depression. I feel like I can't do anything. If I sit and meditate or anything, like it's just not helping.
Exactly.
What would you recommend doing? Because sometimes I feel like I tell myself to go for a walk or I just watch my breath, but sometimes I feel like that's like escapist. I can't tell if it's escapist or not, essentially. Like if I'm just like avoiding the emotions or if that is a way to confront them.
See, the part of the problem, Navita, and I mentioned it before, it's a bit like you're asking me, Robina, all my teeth are falling out. What am I going to do? It's sort of a bit late. I'm not being rude now. Hear my point. Because we haven't got good systems to take care of our teeth. Your car's collapsing because you haven't got good mechanics. And this is our problem in the modern world. We don't look into our minds day by day when things seem to be doing okay, because underneath lots of stuff is happening and we don't pay attention until it's too late, until you're in despair and hopelessness. We leave things to it's too late. So one learning is, that's why you start a daily practice. It mightn't bring an immediate benefit, but you've got to start using these preventative methods so that you can learn to become more familiar with your mind. Because you see, depression and hopelessness are more subtle than having raging, angry fits. You understand? They're very volatile and obvious. But when it's more subtle, it's much harder to see, and we always leave it till it's too late. So it really just, a daily practice is really helpful in saying mantras and doing things, but it's not quick fix, sweetheart. It's helping you move forward in a healthy way. So then, do you have a daily practice? Do you have some kind of practice? What do you, or not?
Yeah, 10 minutes in the morning of like shamatha, just following my breath.
Have you any kind of practices related to the Buddhas? Are you like a Buddhist or something? I'm just asking.
Yeah, I have a hard time keeping up. Like I used to read the King of Prayers before sleeping or read the 8 Mind training in the morning, but I have trouble keeping up anything.
Now I understand. So so then you see also, it's like if you go to a therapist and she'd be asking you the same question, you've got to look at the bigger picture. You got to look at, because depression and hopelessness is just a symptom in a way. It could be all sorts of things that aren't working properly. So all of it, we have to look into our lives and look at in a sense, I was talking to Erin, try and get a bigger picture. We've got, the more we get in touch with our own mind, the more we're going to see if we're satisfied, if what we're doing is the right thing, if the relationship we've got is the right relationship, if the job we're in is the right job. All of it's part of our life. We have to look at all the components, and maybe we're going to make some fundamental changes. Maybe it's just a question of some daily practice. You've got to there's no quick fix, darling. But the broader point also is to have confidence that all these hopeless feelings and emotions aren't concrete, they're not permanent, and that can give us courage to know that there is light at the end of the tunnel, so it'll help us persevere. That's a really important point, sweetheart, instead of despairing. So that's why people kill themselves, because we can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. We have incredible potential. And often when we are practicing Nivita, even some of these symptoms can come up more strongly, because in fact you are practicing. As Lama Zopa calls it, the dirt is coming out. So darling, try and have some daily practice. Try and do the things you like to do. Have the
I think you're absolutely right.
have the discipline to do that, and really kind of know you've got potential, and just keep moving and keep doing your practice, but looking at all the components of your life, looking into yourself. What do I really want? Is it, I mean, these things often, sometimes we try just to be good girls and we hide everything, you know, but it's got to come out somewhere. Do you understand, Nivita?
Yeah, thank you.
Good, sweetheart.
Yep.
Be brave, okay? Be brave.
Thank you.
All right. Kathleen. Unmute, sweetheart. Can't hear you, darling. You need to unmute. Kathleen, unmute, sweetheart. Kathleen. There we go. Now I can hear you good. Talk to me.
I just have to say, it's really, I'm fired up whenever I hear you speak. I saw you 2 years ago, so thank you. I had asked about the 4 R's, and one of the things that I guess I wanted to be reminded about was that I know regret and understand it. The reliance, I understand as well. The remedy, you know, when I was active, I'm a recovering alcoholic addict. And when I was using, I stole constantly.
Yes.
So what I do now, I try I do the 4 R's. I guess my question is when I, like, for example, I try to do anonymous as much as possible, because that feels like it's more of an imprint. But when I go, like, for example, there's a lot of homelessness, so it's cold where I live. I make little packages and I hand them out. I do the imprint in my mind of when, first of all, when I was in that position of being, you know, very suffering, homeless, addict. And then I, in my mind, I visualize when I've stolen, you know, from my mother. I stole from my mother a lot.
Sure.
So what I guess I'm trying to ask you is that when I do that, I feel like, I wonder, I guess, is how long until that there's guilt mixed with the regret, because it's my mother.
I hear you, darling. No, I hear you, Kathleen. You see, it's like chipping away, it's like this giant tree, and you just chip away at it every day. And it is chipping away. It's all part of the broader process of mold, as Lama Zopa calls it, molding your mind into the shape you want to become. It's a slow, gradual process. So when we understand it's that, it's not until we're super advanced and have finally realized the ultimate nature of reality that we've cut the root of all the rubbish. So it's a way to go, but we keep on top of it. It's like gardening every day. You just got to do it. And as you garden every day, you pull out the weeds and new ones come. And it's a subtle job every day. So you don't have to sort of think, well, I've fixed that one, I've done that one, now I better regret another one. It's just all the things we can remember that are our main habits. But then we all know, if we've taken the view we've got another life, we've done countless things in the past. So then you say, and whatever I've done to harm others, because I'm sick of the suffering, I regret. And then you have compassion. Then you do them. The third step is like, I don't know, what do you do for the third step? Do you do the mantra and that practice? You know that practice?
What is the mantra for the third? The
one that we do typically as a particular meditation. The third step is actually, we call it the 4 R's. It's the remedy. But actually, it's really the meaning of it is the antidote. So your point is really good. When you regret the stealing and the things that you did, when you give things to others, that's a perfect antidote. The antidote to lying is to tell the truth. The antidote to killing is to help others. The antidote to stealing is to give. So that's marvelous what you're doing. You're actually applying the antidote to those things that you've been regretting. That's beautiful. That's perfect. But the one we tend to do as a particular practice, what part of the world are you in?
North Carolina, Asheville.
Okay, so you're on the East Coast, a bit late for you. I mean, at 9 o'clock every evening in our center in North Carolina, that's 11 p.m. for you, but maybe it's worth for 30 minutes just doing it. Or you look on YouTube, you'll find it's a guided meditation. So it might give you the clues of how to do it nicely.
Okay. All right. And my sister, my sister has a question real quick. Is
Good,
there,
good.
I'm sure we could Google it or YouTube it, but a specific mantra she was saying for anger and patience that you could
No, it's sort of like, I mean, the best one to answer that would be the mantra of compassion, Om Mani Padme Hum.
Okay. Yep.
Compassion and loving kindness, you know, when
Yep.
you sort of, I mean, we know anger and impatience is, you know, what you want to kill people, these horrible people out there. But Om Mani Padme Hum is compassion and loving kindness. It opens our hearts a little bit and softens the heart. That's marvelous. Om Mani Padme Hum. And it's very nice to sing it. You know, it's got a nice tune.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, darling. Thank you so much. You're doing beautifully, by the way. I admire you. You're doing really well, Kathleen.
Venerable Robina, Tracy she's next. She has a question in chat.
Good,
So,
Tracy.
so Lou, can you read her question? I just wanted to make sure she didn't get lost in the chat.
When we are in pain while meditating, how do we deal with that while we're meditating?
I really want to hear more, Tracy. I don't want to answer. If you're the Tracy with your hand up, I'd love you to say some more, sweetheart. Hello. Good, Tracy. So say a little bit more, darling. Say a little bit more.
Yeah, I was just kind of building on what Lucy had asked about the pain. So I have frozen shoulder.
Physical pain.
Physical pain. Yeah.
Oh, good. Now I understand. So sorry. Yeah, go on.
And so when I'm sitting in meditation, the pain becomes more gross, and sometimes it makes it harder to meditate, and I have to stop. And sometimes I'm able to go beyond the pain,
That's
but
exactly right. Yes.
I don't know what's happening.
I know, but I think the body is such a sensitive instrument, you know, and because the Buddhist, like the Tibetan medical system, which is a bit like the acupuncture one, and it's from the Vajrayana Buddhist system. We've got this subtle wind energies, prana, and a subtle nervous system, and it's intimately linked to all our states of mind. So often when, you know, the body and mind are so connected, you know, that it can easily be this way. But my sense is be practical, be sensible, you know, darling. I mean, meditate. You can meditate on your neck. You can meditate upside down. You can meditate on the toilet. It's your mind working on something. So don't be fundamentalist about it and think you have to sit like that. If it's too tense, relax your body, walk, do something different, you know, take care of your body, please. I can't say more than that, darling.
Okay. So
you can overcome it. It's a good practice. It's a good practice to do that. But it's sometimes quite hard, darling.
And a second kind of piece to that is I've been told at one point to meditate twice a day, once in the morning and then once in the afternoon, so that I can have the benefits of my meditation practice keep me kind of throughout the day. And I was curious what your thoughts are on that versus once in the morning and once in the evening before going to bed.
I understand, darling. Okay. I mean, you know, sometimes you can do more than a session a day, but it also depends upon the practice that you're talking about. I mean, we in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, we have concentration meditation, which is focusing, but we have all kinds of other ones. We have visualizations, we have recitations of mantras, we have nice verses, spiritual verses that we recite. So it's different kinds of practices for different purposes. So it's very much individual, very much what your kind of practice is and what a person finds helpful. Some people have such an exhausting day, they come home at night and they're so tired, they'd rather do a second session. I mean, we do a purification practice, the 4 R's, at the end of the day normally. So I just feel it's a nice way to begin and end your day. But it's up to the individual, sweetheart, to work out what's best for you. It really and truly is.
Okay, thank you so much. This is my first encounter with you, and I love it.
Happy to meet you, darling. Happy to meet you. Thank you, Tracy. Yes, Lucy. Talk to me, Lucy.
Evening.
Hello.
I was brought up Catholic, although it never really stuck with me at all. And the concept of guilt in Catholicism is huge because it's drilled into you from the cradle.
That's right.
How do you deal with it as a Buddhist?
That's a really good point, because I'm an old Catholic. I mean, I was actually, Lucy, I don't know, I was brought up a Catholic, but I was in love with God. I was in love with Our Lady and all the saints. And I never had guilt, Lucy. So it's just different types of minds, you know, because I think I was such a naughty girl. I didn't have much guilt. And interestingly, I didn't have much guilt, but I know a lot about guilt, because guilt, if we analyze it, it's sort of like, since a little girl, we've internalized, well, God says this, and mummy says that, and daddy says this, and grandma says this. And we're sort of like, we've got to do what they say. That's the feeling, isn't it? So we've inbuilt all those assumptions. And then later on, even though mummy is dead and daddy is dead, we've still got their voices in our head. And we're still trying to be a good girl. We know that's what guilt is. So we really have to unpack it, darling. We really have to we've got to become brave and responsible. Because guilt is like, it's almost as if mummy's looking over your shoulder, criticizing you. So therefore I'm a bad girl. We've got to really look at this, and we have to slowly change it, because there's no basis in reality. It's like, it's really painful, and it's very brutal against ourselves. We have to learn to take responsibility. So the thing is about regret, when we do this discussion about regretting what we've done wrong, it's like acknowledging, the Buddhist view is, you acknowledge you did something, you shouted at your boyfriend. So you regret having done that because you are sick of the suffering of the shouting. And then you have compassion for your boyfriend. So in the way we talk, regret's like compassion for yourself. It's like, if you get diabetes, you're going to have, I regret eating that sugar, not because I'm a bad girl, because I don't want diabetes. So the whole idea of regret is a more wholesome attitude. I'm sick of this pain. I'm sick of these old habits. I'm sick of this rubbish. So you regret it because you are sick of suffering. It's kind of kindness to yourself. We've got to change it slowly, because guilt is a very old habit. We've got to be grown up about it and know, even if other people do criticize us, Lucy, that's their problem. We've got to have this authenticity and courage to be responsible ourselves. It's a slow process, honey, but it's possible.
Thank you.
Well, and of course, in Buddhism, darling, there's no creator, there's no punisher, and there's no rewarder. So really, guilt is irrelevant, but it's a very ancient habit we've all got.
Thank you. That makes sense.
Thank you, Lucy. Thank you. Yes, Juhi, talk to me.
Hi, Venerable. We only have 3 minutes. I'll try to
talk
quickly. Previously, with very little to none spiritual knowledge, I was quite arrogant and self-cherishing.
Start again, sweetheart. I missed the point. Start again.
Previously, let's say 3 years ago, with very little spiritual knowledge, very little, I was quite arrogant and self-cherishing.
I understand.
Now, with a little bit of spiritual knowledge, I feel my head getting bigger.
You sure? Come on, girl. I don't believe it. No. I don't think so.
I've started to suspect myself when somebody shares like a problem with me, and I say it's not a big deal, because I feel I have a new lens.
So you mean that sounds a bit like you're impatient with somebody, not arrogant.
Both.
Well, okay, it's possible. It's possible, Juhi. And that's because you've got a sharp mind. And sometimes I've got a sharp mind too. We can be a bit mean, you know, but I think it's possible. But also you can temper it and you can see it. And it's being a little bit compassionate to the other person, because you know yourself, if you conquered that problem, it brings you empathy, because you know other people have. Not, oh, now it's not a problem for me. That's a bit self-cherishing, right? But that's okay. Just watch it. You're aware of it. So watch it, darling, and add empathy to it, because it's good to have the wisdom. And if you have empathy with the wisdom, then you're very beneficial to others. So just catch it. It's okay.
Okay. Thank
you.
you.
Keep moving. Okay, darling. Hello, Masha. Hello, everybody. Hello, Susie. I think it's time to go again. 1 hour goes like a dream, doesn't it? It's like a miracle, you know, but we made the most of it. We have made the most of it, okay? So, darling people, I'll see you next Tuesday I'll probably still be in, no, I won't. I'll be in Leeds next Tuesday. I'll be in Leeds up north of England. I think. Not sure. Okay, Petals, happy to see you all. Happy everybody. Lorna, so good. David, hello, my dear.